What is up, everybody? Brian Mendler back in your life on the first Monday in May, and I am super excited today to be joined by Brad Johnson, Dr. Brad Johnson. And I got to tell you, man, you're my 51st episode, and you are the most requested guest that I've ever had. So I was getting literally hit up on Twitter and on Instagram day after day saying, you got to bring on Brad Johnson. You got to bring on Brad Johnson. So you're obviously resonating with teachers out there. Congratulations on that. And it's good to finally meet you, man.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here with you.
It's good to see you. So what is it about, like, what gets you to resonate with teachers so much? Like, I know you're just so pro teacher, which I think is phenomenal. And where did that come from for you?
I guess just being in the trenches for so many years myself. Um, I was a science teacher, middle school, grade level. So you got to be a little out there to handle those teenagers and all their hormones. But I love teaching, and I just loved the teachers that I worked with through the years. And moving into administration, the one thing I wanted to do was make sure that my teachers felt supported and appreciated. And even as I moved into the collegiate level to teach leadership, that's the one thing I impress on all my students is when you move into that administrative role, just make sure that you're taking care of your teachers. They're our most valuable resource. You know, teachers go into it, so many of them feel like it's a calling, and teachers have such, like, I always say teachers speak the affirmative or affirmation language. And so I think we have to make sure that we're affirming them often enough as well. So yeah, definitely, I'm just a big time teacher advocate. I know the hours they put in, I know the just the blood, the sweat, the tears they pour into teaching, and it's just so underappreciated in our culture. And I don't mean that towards administrators, but just our culture in general. And I get the same feedback from around the world. It's not just here in the US, but Canada, India, just really all around the globe, New Zealand, Africa. I get the same kind of comments and just the thanks for the support for teachers, because it's such an isolating job in itself. When you're in the classroom with the students, even if you're on a team, it's very isolating. And I think right now, working from home, man, it really is it just feels like each teacher just feels like it's them against the world. And not in a bad way, but just they don't feel that support maybe that they would from teammates normally. And so I just think it's so isolating that to have someone encouraging you, even if it's online, really does help them, keep them inspired, keep them motivated, and affirm that what they're doing counts and matters, and that they are still influencing and touching the lives of their students.
No question about it. So take me through your career. Like, so you said you taught middle level. Where did it start for you? Actually, let's go back even further than that. When you were a kid, did you want to be a teacher? Were you interested in education? Were you a good student yourself?
I was a great student academically. Like, I could blow the top out of your standardized tests. In the classroom, I wasn't necessarily the greatest student. I was the athlete. I had tons of energy. I could get in trouble really quick. I've often said that if my elementary school classes didn't have 2 or 3 recesses a day, man, I would have stayed in trouble. So I'm so thankful for that. And I tell people all the time, our recess wasn't timed like 10 or 15 minutes. We just went out till one of us got hurt, and then we would come back in. But we would have at least 2 recesses a day. And then after lunch, we would have time to go out and play as well. And that really did help me burn off the energy and stay focused in class where I could do well. There was one teacher and one principal that really influenced me. I don't think that from a young age said, oh, I want to go into education or teaching, because I was the athlete. I wanted to go play a pro sport. But I had a seventh grade science teacher, which ironically I became a middle school science teacher. But she was a big time Georgia Bulldog fan, which I was as well. And just how she taught the class and connected to it, she made it fun. But the one thing I really remember from her class was her review games. And she would give away prizes like Georgia Bulldog cups full of candy or maybe stickers or something like that in it. And so I was a good student anyway, like I said, academically, but I always made sure that I really studied for her review exams so that I could win some of those prizes. And I did the same thing as a teacher. You know, I made the review games really fun so that students would want to win a prize or get extra recess or whatever it was that I was offering. And it's amazing how that the students would study for exams. You know, just that little bit of incentive that you don't really think about just really makes a difference sometimes. So she was a big influence on me. And then my high school principal, I've just finished a book. It's called Principal Boot Camp. And I talk about him in the book and how that he was really, you didn't really think of him as the principal. You know, usually when you see the principal come in the classroom, everybody like freezes up or straightens up, but he was just so calm. He would come in the classroom and just sit down and listen to the teacher teach. He wasn't, well, I don't even think we had cell phones then for him to be on because I'm getting up there in age, but he would just sit down and listen. He wouldn't be on a computer. He wouldn't be there to evaluate necessarily. He was just there to visit, see what was going on in the classrooms. He would always talk to students in the hallway, teachers in the hallway. So he just made, you know, his role just seemed to be to support and take care of everyone in the school, really. And that made a big impact on me, especially when I moved into administration, was that, you know, I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be that person that people weren't scared to see coming down the hall, that you were looking forward to it and knew that, you know, we would engage in good conversation or whatever, and that I was there to be helpful.
So seventh grade science teacher, how long doing that, and then into administration from there?
Yeah, so I taught about 9 years and then moved into administration. I kind of, once I went into teaching, uh, playing sports and just life in general, I've always had like a passion for leadership, just in general, not necessarily as a school administrator, but through teaching, I really felt like I wanted to move to that next level and really influence people. I love teaching. I love the students, but I love being able to influence an even larger audience, so to speak. And then you kind of grow, I think, into servant leadership. I've not only taught it, been an administrator, but I've interviewed a lot of highly successful leaders in different fields around the world, really, from pro or from like college sports coaches to CEOs to best-selling authors, etc. And what I found from them is through the years they developed into more of a servant type leader. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do, was move into that, really serving others. And
Who's one that jumps out to you? I love sports as well, and I love, you know, I'm in that world too. So who's one interview that jumps out to you that you did?
well, there was actually four, and I'll share them really quick. Bobby Bowden, FSU coach,
Sure.
most winningest coach of all time, just very servant oriented. Just his whole philosophy, taking care of his team, taking care of his players. He was definitely one known to give second chances, and he talked about that too. He got criticism from it at times. Oh, you just keep them because they're a good athlete, and he's like, well, I'm helping prepare them for life too. You know, in life we get second chances, third chances. So I thought that was a great point. Chester Hill,
Florida State football coach, by the way, for people who don't know, for a long time. How long I think he was there for what, over 20 years, right?
I think about 20 years. He started out, I think at West Virginia, I can't remember his exact path, but yeah, he was mainly
Yeah.
at Florida State, and he's actually the winningest Division I coach of all time with
Wow.
200 and something wins. Chester Elton was another one. He wrote a book called The Carrot Principle. He is really about appreciation, and that's part of where my book, it's called Putting Teachers First, come from. It really is about having that servant mentality of taking care of your teachers. I say all the time, because I get pushback sometimes from people, oh, the students are the priority. And I'm like, in importance, they are, but in priority, if your administrators will take care of their teachers, you know your teachers are going to take care of your students. And so when I talk about putting teachers first, it's not about importance, but it's about priority, and it's about who does it. You know, in the business world, you've heard, I think Richard Branson is the one that's quoted the most with this, but I'm sure it was said for decades before. But he said, my customer doesn't come first. My employee comes first, because I know if I take care of them, they're going to take care of the customer.
Yeah. So when you say that, when you say putting teachers first, you don't necessarily mean we're not putting students first. Your mentality is, if I put the teacher first, then the teacher will put the student first, so ultimately you are putting the student first. Is that did I say that kind of right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because think about it this way. If your teacher knows they're supported and appreciated and encouraged, are they not going to give 110% more in the classroom versus a teacher that feels beat down, never supported, like they're thrown under the bus, or that they're not appreciated? They still give a lot because they feel like their job is a calling. But man, there's a huge difference between someone that doesn't feel supported and appreciated and someone that does. And that reflects in the classroom, it reflects in their relationships with their students and how successful their students are going to ultimately be.
What do you mean, though, specifically when you say um, making teachers feel supported? Because I hear that phrase a lot from teachers, right? One of the phrases I hear frequently from teachers is, I don't feel like I'm supported, right? That's a very common phrase that I will get. And often my response is, well, what exactly do you want the administrator to do? So what specifically do you mean when you say supporting teachers?
Right. So I pull from my experiences a lot of times with moving into administration and the things that I talk about. I remember being put on committees, and you would spend hours working on things, and then you would present it to the administration, and then they would do what they wanted anyway. So, you know, giving them voice, giving them input, you know, you'll hear people say administration needs to listen, but it's not just listening, because we can listen and then go again and do whatever we want, but it's about listening, it's about taking in their feedback, their input, and then incorporating it. You know, I tell leaders all the time, there's a big difference between your vision and then sharing your vision with your staff, getting feedback from them, and creating our vision. And so teachers just want to be treated as professionals. So that support is about, listen to what I'm saying, but then let's act on it. That doesn't mean you always will, but if you never do, then they're just going to stop caring as much. Again, it's not that they're not going to still care about their students, but it's hard when you have an administration that doesn't listen to you. And the teachers are the experts in the classroom. You know, I share, especially with young leaders, you're going to have teachers that are probably better leaders than you are, because they have 20 years experience or 30 years experience. And so it's important to listen to them and work as a team. It's not you against them. You know, we got to create that us mentality, not the we versus them. That's a big one. And then trusting them to do their job in the classroom. I think micromanaging is probably one of the worst things for teachers, and it kills morale the quickest. You've got to trust them. I tell people, I tell administrators, I tell teachers too all the time, we hire teachers based on their strengths, but then we manage them based on their weaknesses. I remember my first job in a public school here. I was hired supposedly based on what I'm bringing to the table. But then the first thing they wanted me to do was spend the year focusing on some of my weaknesses and how to develop them. And I'm like, that's what we do with students too. We never really focus on what they do well and let them be great at it, but we focus on what their weakness is. If they're great at science and weak at math, we never see just how great they can become at science. We're just trying to get them to get a little better at math to pass a test. And that becomes the focus. And it's kind of the same way with teachers. We need to trust them enough to give them the autonomy to go in the classroom because they're the expert that knows what their students need, and let them do it.
Would you also agree though that some are better than others? Because I think some are better than others. I mean, I've been talking about this on my show now for the last number of weeks that I'm watching during the pandemic what's happening in my personal house. I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. My daughter's just finishing kindergarten and my son's just finishing second grade. And my daughter's teacher's been unbelievable through this. I mean, communicating left and right, teaching live on her computer an hour and a half, 4 days a week. And my son's teacher, I've hardly gotten much from her. She's gotten better actually as the last couple weeks have gone on. But the first 4 weeks didn't even get an email, and I was frustrated by that. And would you agree that some are better than others? And as an administrator, how do you go about pushing the ones that you feel like need to get better?
Well, first of all, I would say in the pandemic, that's kind of mixing apples and oranges because that's not the teacher's classroom realistically.
Sure.
You know, if I'm in my science class in the school, I'm probably going to work a little differently than I would at home, you know, in all this chaos. But generally speaking, you know, most of us can walk in a classroom and tell if a teacher's effective or not. Maybe not pinpoint things, but you get a sense of what's going on. But I'm one that's a big believer in mentoring. We shouldn't just mentor the first year and be done. To me, that's a big mistake. Even with, think about administrators, they need mentors. And I know a lot of districts do that, but I encourage them to get a mentor that may not even be in education, just a really good leader that understands leadership to help mentor them and bring them along. The other thing too, when you talk about teachers, you think about, we have 5 generations of teachers, you know, from those about to retire to those just coming in. And I would encourage them to it's not always the experienced one that should be mentoring. And I share this with leaders too. If you're a seasoned veteran, talk to someone. Maybe they're not mentoring, maybe that's not the right word, but you should be in dialogue with someone much younger than you so that you understand different generations and understand what motivates them. We all have different motivators, and especially at different generational levels, we have different motivators. We have different things that do encourage us, inspire us. But I think mentoring just consistently is so important. And giving teachers, the one thing I talk about is the respect of their time. How often do we go into schools and see teachers don't get their planning time because they're in committees or other meetings or whatever? If you've got a team and they're able to plan together and work together and really grow as a team, I think that helps bring your weaker teachers up too. I think it's a disservice to education if a new teacher comes in and doesn't make it to the second year. I don't necessarily put that on the teacher unless they're just really horrible and not trying. But for the most part, administration should know how they're doing and be in there helping them and supporting them and getting them the, you know, the mentorship they need, letting them visit expert classrooms. I mean, probably the best teacher, I travel all around the country, probably the best teacher that I've ever seen actually taught right down the hall from me. And she was amazing. And you talked about earlier, some teachers just seem to be better than others. And she had that personality, that very outgoing and connect with kids, but she also did the little things right too. And so I think that's something that's often overlooked in education with helping teachers get from good to great is helping them understand time management. organizational skills, how to set up routines and expectations, because all of that is kind of new when you're thrown into a classroom, and that's a lot to try and navigate on your own. So it's not always the superstar teacher that should be mentoring, but it should be looking for mentors that can help them in areas that they do need, while helping them really build on those strengths that they have to shine themselves.
Well, and I think during the pandemic, that point that you made is extra valuable and extra important, because I think it's a great point, because my daughter's teacher is definitely a lot younger, and she technology is her thing, right? She grew up with it. When you grow up with a phone in your hand, which I did not, right? I'm 44. I did not grow up with a phone in my hand. A phone did not become addicted to my hand till I was about probably 25 is where. But when you are a person who grows up with it, it's just a lot easier to transition, I think, from one to another. And I think teachers right now, when you have those veterans who are sort of in the classroom, and normally the younger ones going to them for advice, when you can flip that right now, I think the level of production that you can get from your veterans during a time like this can dramatically increase.
Absolutely. And I've shared that with several. Your exact point is that right now, some of the younger teachers can be the ones to really mentor and help your veteran teachers because of that. But we should always be looking at that. It shouldn't always be about, how much experience you have or your seniority, but it should be about what are your strengths and how can you share those with others. And that's my whole point with education, with whether it's students or with the teachers, is if we're focused on what our strengths are, some of the best professional development in schools can be your teachers there with certain strengths, sharing them with the rest of the school. I mean, teachers have so many strengths and passions and that they can bring to the table that can really help build up the other teachers as well.
No question. So I'm curious. I've asked this of a lot of leaders, a lot of administrators over the last 7 weeks during this. As an administrator, like for example, if I was a teacher, which I was never an administrator, so I was only a teacher, and so I come from that perspective. As a teacher right now, what would you as an administrator expect of me during a time like this?
Um, to me personally, I think less is more right now, because we have so many students that may or may not have access to a classroom, to the internet. You have homes with multiple students that maybe only have access to one computer. I mean, we have to really think beyond just what you would do in your classroom to the reality of the students in the homes. When they're all in your classroom, it's one thing, but being in their homes, parents may or may not be there. Parents may or may not have just lost their jobs. I said when I go to the grocery store and I can't even buy toilet paper, we got to realize things aren't normal right now. So I really think less is more. I really think it's more about connecting. I tweeted out a thing that just went viral about relationships before rigor, patience before programs, grace before grades, and love before lessons. And I think that's really how we have to look at it. Understand there's parents that want more for their students. And I would just encourage teachers to offer them supplements. Or there's so many online, like Study Island is a great resource. They have made it free right now in the pandemic to parents. Students can get on there and it's standard based and do all kinds of work and fun games and activities on there. So there's ways to supplement without feeling like you have to bring every student in for every class every day. I think teachers are doing so much more than what people think behind the scenes anyway, because when you have parents that, you have teachers checking emails at 9, 10 o'clock at night because that's the only time a parent can reach them, or, first thing in the morning. It's not, I know we like to think of it as a 8 to 3 or 8 to 4 schedule or something like that, but for teachers, it's really not. whether they're doing classes online live or not. And so to me, it's my suggestion. If I was administrator right now, my teacher,
Yeah.
I'd be like, take care of yourself first, take care of your family, make sure they're okay, and then do what you can to get your students together. If you can set up a time and teach. Virtual teaching, I have some friends that do that in different states, and it's really set up very different than what we think. Most of them only teach once or twice a week live online to their students. They don't teach every day.
Right.
And so I think that adds a level that the brick and mortar schools and administrators for brick and mortar schools don't really realize. So do the best you can, get out what you can. Understand that a lot of your students may not even be able to get online to come to a class,
Sure.
but offer them, do what you can. I think the grading is going to be the big issue because of the accessibility or not. Again, I think we got to think more about
Yeah.
grace and grades right now.
So it's interesting to hear you say that, because I watch what's happening in my own home, and I love that my daughter's teacher teaches live 4 days a week. It's the best time for me, and it's because and I actually think it's incredibly helpful for parents, because it gives us a break, right? I mean, parents now are with kids 24/7, and I understand teachers have their own kids. What I love though is that some teachers are bringing their own kids into the mix, right? I've seen it where some teachers are saying, yep, I got a fourth grader at my house and I teach second grade, and my fourth grader is going to help me plan for my second grade Zoom call or my second grade, whatever they're doing. And I actually think that's the best way to handle it. Of course, I believe in taking care of your family, but at the same time, I think it's critical that these teachers do not stop taking care of their kids. This is the time, I believe, right now. When we talk about relationships, right? When do you build relationships with people in life? It's when things are bad. I mean, it's easy to be there in life for people when things are good. I say that all the time, right? 250 people show up for the wedding, right? How many showed up for the divorce, right? When things go bad, it's hard to find people. And I think for a lot of kids, these are really hard times. And I think it's cool to see what a lot of the teachers are doing, right? You're seeing the parades, and you're seeing, the Google Hangouts, and for me, it's like, I'm all in on that. And I want to tell you one other thing. I know you might disagree with me. I think based on some of your tweets, you probably do, and a lot of people do. But I think it's easier to teach on the computer than it is in person. I mean, literally, there's no mute button in person, right? So I can't hit mute in a real classroom. I can on Zoom, and next thing you know, I can teach. I got no distractions, right? I think if you're a middle school or high school teacher, most of those guys are phenomenal content experts, right? So they know their social studies inside out. Well, normally in a regular school, you got to teach 4 or 5 sections of social studies 7th grade in a day. Now you could teach it once, put it up on demand. My daughter's lessons literally are on demand. You can watch them anytime. It's unbelievable. And I actually think this is the direction education is going. I believe when this is all said and done, and it's not going to happen in a week or in a month, but within 5 years, my prediction is every kid will be one-to-one technology. That will be a for sure thing in every school, because you can't have what you said, right? Which is some kids can get on and other kids can't. Some teachers can get on and other kids can't, which is another issue that I've run into. Is some teachers are like, I don't even have access at my house. I'm like, gotcha. The other thing I think will happen is I think internet will become a right in this country. I think it's going to get to where we give everybody internet access, And the third thing I believe, and I don't think teachers are going to like when I say this, but I'm just saying what I think every lesson will be recorded. It's not going to happen right away, but I'm watching it now, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, why does my kid have to miss school anymore, even if he's not there, right? With that technology we're seeing that exists right now, you could Zoom it out from your classroom. So now you teach in your classroom, and I believe there will be schools and will be classrooms, because we need social, emotional, and all that. But in terms of the actual academic, if I'm a parent and my son is, in the hospital because he had surgery, he doesn't have to miss school anymore, right? I mean, you could put a camera up in the corner of the classroom over here and a camera in the middle, and the teacher teaches. And as a parent, I'm sitting there going, I'm still paying my taxes. My kid can now watch the lesson on demand. And I don't know. What do you think? You think that might happen?
Well, we were seeing some schools. I know the county I live in, they have for inclement weather days, they have virtual school.
Interesting.
So a lot of counties, are around the country are kind of moving to that anyway. Not to mention we have, I would say, I don't know what percentage, but there is a percentage now of the population that just does virtual school. You think of like the states like Florida has a virtual school, Pennsylvania, not to mention like the K-12 Inc. is the big, I mean, I think here in Georgia, there's, I think over 20,000 students just in their one virtual school, and
No
there's
way.
multiple virtual schools here.
Wow.
So there
So
is
it's
kind of
moving
that.
that way already, is what you're
Yes,
saying.
we're kind of moving that way. I've heard a lot of people talking about maybe we only go to a 3 or 4 day school week and then have a day or two virtual school on a
Mhm.
regular basis. Now, I don't know how that works with logistics of parents being at home, that kind of thing. Um, you know, I don't know. I agree with you with the teaching though right now online is that yeah, you don't have the interruptions, the class interruption, things like that. My big thing with it though is the access for all students because I know even like in rural areas like in North Georgia, even if they have internet, it's awful the
Yep.
quality of the internet. It lags, it's so slow. And when you have parents now working from home too, it's almost impossible, for them to get on and engage in classes. So that's more of
Agreed.
where I'm coming from. That in an
I
ideal
agree.
setting, I agree with you 100%. You can sit there, get, present your lesson. You don't have to worry about classroom management at
Right.
all. But I do think
Which
there's
puts
just,
me out of work. Like I don't like it because I'm a classroom management guy, right? It's what I do. So I don't want that to be the case. But I keep telling people if you could bring one thing back to the classroom, it would be the mute button, would it not? I mean, imagine
absolutely.
if you could just hit mute on certain kids. It would literally change the world of education. Fortunately, you can't in person yet.
No, no, absolutely. That's a great point. The other thing too, I think, is you talked about like the classes every day. If they're a team, a team of teachers, let them teach one a week and let the, I think there's ways to do it without like all of them being online all the time. So, I think there are adaptations we can make. But I do think the kids need some normalcy in this, like you said. And I feel for the parents too, because I know that, they didn't sign up for virtual school either.
No.
I know the teachers miss the students, and that's one of the big things that I talk about in some of my tweets, and I know makes it so hard because I've always said, you know, the students are what keep a lot of teachers in education because they're there for the kids. They love the kids. They love that interaction. So they're missing a big piece of what does motivate and inspire them right now. And that
No
adds
question.
to anxiety, depression, things like that. Um, but
It's tough
the
right
peer,
now. Like I don't think the thing is right now is that I don't think there's a playbook, right? So I don't there was no playbook going into right for I don't think for anybody even. Like for me there was no playbook. I mean, I was running around the country. I was in supposed to be in 16 different cities in March. I did the first 8 and then it was like I was running full speed and fell off a cliff. You know what I mean? But I landed and I was started looking around. But when you fall off a cliff and you land and you're still alive, you're like, okay, cool. But what comes next? And there's like sort of a bewilderment stage that you go through. But I also think right now the book is being written, right? So as it goes, I see some people who have really embraced this, like who have taken it on and made it their own. And one of the things my daughter's teacher does really well is she's very simple, right? So that's one thing I love is she doesn't give kids work, so to speak, right? She literally they come on kindergarten, sing a song, read a book, do show and tell, done. Right, that's it. And I get it, right? We're a little different. Everybody has internet access here. I also think though teachers have to be careful allowing that to stop them. And what I always say about that is if you showed up to school to teach and half your class was there and the other half wasn't there, you would still instruct the half that was there. You wouldn't say, well, we're not going to teach this half that are here because the other half didn't show up for whatever the reason was, right? You would instruct who was there. And then you would work like a maniac to figure out, how do we get that other half here? And you put all that energy into that. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's, what I tell people is I 100% understand the issue. And that's why I am 100% for good internet access and one-to-one. Every kid has a Chromebook. And then these issues are taken care of. I still, though, think that the ones who have said, yeah, I know, I don't have them all on there, but I got a number of them. And let me just, I met a teacher the other day who's doing 15-minute lunches every day with her kids, right? It's awesome. So she's like, I have 3 kids. She goes, and every day we just rotate the kids, and it's 15 to 20 minutes, and I just sit and I eat lunch with them, and they bring a sandwich, and we just talk about what's going on in our life. And she's like, she literally told me, she goes, it's the best part of my whole week. It's amazing.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
love
And
what these guys are doing.
yeah, and I'm all
It's so
for them.
inspiring to see. Sorry.
Oh no, no, I agree, and I really like those. Like you said, so many teachers are missing their students. I love the creative ways they're trying to engage with
I
them.
know.
And like you said, whether it's lunch or just a chat, I think if you just open up the chat room and just let them see each other, especially your elementary students, they're missing, their classmates, and they don't have, uh, high schoolers are typically used to texting with each other anyway, so they're probably handling it a little better. But your elementary level, being able to come on and see each other and kind of talk to each other for a few minutes, I think is, really is something that helps them and gives them some normalcy. The other thing too is I hope administrators are realizing all of this too, and how, some of my tweets were like, you know, be supportive first and foremost. Because I hear, man, I get hundreds of messages a day from all over, and usually it's people that want to vent. Most people don't email, hey, things are going great. But when they feel like the administrators are coming in, like to evaluate them for their last evaluation of the year in their Zoom class or whatever, that to me, that kind of thing, I think we can kind of put on hold. I do love that for the most part, we've done away with the standardized testing for this year. Georgia was actually one of the first to suspend the standardized testing and teacher evaluations. So I don't know if we're doing everything right, but I do know we got that part right.
I was curious what you meant by that when you said the teacher said their person was coming on a Zoom call. What is that? So someone would complain that. Explain.
No, so administrators were saying that that's how they were going to do their teacher evaluation.
Got it.
And I'm like, that's, how is that really evaluating them, outside the normal classroom
Yeah.
kind of thing? And I'm like, if you've been in the classroom already throughout the year, you kind of know where they're at anyway. So
No
I
doubt.
don't really, and
I
I,
do agree with that. I agree that you should know where they're at by now, but I also, watching again what's happening in my house, my daughter's principal sits in frequently on the lessons. And I think it's really good, actually, that she does, because she's watching what a phenomenal person is doing. And so as the leader, she can now take that information and go back to her staff and say, I'm not telling you to do it this way, but I'm showing you what the gold standard is, right? I mean, there's got to be a gold standard. There's got to be a benchmark that people are shooting for, right? Basketball, Michael Jordan, people are like, all right, look at him, right? It doesn't mean we're going to be him. Let's be clear about that. But you want to talk about how you get great, you put an effort like Kobe put in, right? You put an effort like MJ put in. And I think her getting to be in there, and I agree, by the way, with I don't necessarily in any way think you need to have like a formal evaluation, like where you're writing but there doesn't need to be. I mean, literally, what's happening right now, at least with my daughter, is she gets evaluated by us. I mean, there's another thing that might change in the future. How about parent evaluations, right? I mean, I'm sitting there watching every day, and all I care about is the effort, right? I know that woman is putting in at least an hour a day, right? Thinking about my kid. And I want her to do that. I think that's an acceptable thing to ask of her. And I think her administrator watching, I see both sides of that one. That's one where I see both sides, because then I'm like, as a teacher, goodness, that would be annoying too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure exactly. I know definitely though she's in there, but I don't think she's trying to get you. And I think that's kind of really what you want to try to stay away from, you know?
Well, I think that's the difference, in that, and you articulated it very well, is the administrators that haven't been around all year, but now they're wanting to come in and, you know, but yeah, I always say administrators should, them coming into a classroom should be as normal as a student coming into a classroom. And it sounds like your daughter's teacher's administrator is that type of person. And so when they come into the virtual classroom, it's just like it's school. That is no big deal. And that is a huge distinction to make. And that's the one that I kind of, I was more towards the other side where, man, if you haven't been watching them all year, interacting with them all year, they're going to feel like it is a gotcha, and they don't need that extra pressure. But absolutely, I think the good administrators do that. They're in and out of classrooms, just like I shared with my principal that made such an impact on me. They're coming to those classrooms to see what's going on. They miss the kids too. They miss their teachers. It's definitely not a gotcha moment, but teachers sense that and know that too, because of their relationship, positive or negative, with
Yeah.
their administrators over the year as well.
I've been that way in my whole career, right? So whatever I've done in my career, the more the merrier is my mindset. The more people that want to watch me, the better. Like you want to watch me teach? Come on in, baby. And I thought it was annoying actually that we were only evaluated a few times a year, because I don't think that's a fair representation, right? I think anybody can have 1, 2, even 3 not good days. But if you're an administrator who's just constantly in and out, then you know when a person might be going through something at home or struggling with something somewhere else in their life, because you're like, that's not her, that's not him. I've seen him 50 times. It's like me with workshops. There's some people who have seen me speak 30 times, literally 30 times. And there's certain times where they're like, man, that wasn't you today. Like, what's going on? And a regular person who didn't see me 30 times wouldn't know, but they do. And they're like, you good? Is everything all right? And it's interesting to see how that dynamic can play out. But for me, like, I don't, as a teacher, as an administrator, as a presenter, as a college professor, right? Get used to everybody watching you, because that's what the world is now. The world is, I mean, you post something on Twitter, you post something on Instagram, that there's no delete. I mean, you don't get to hit delete, right? So, I mean, you might hit delete, but somebody screenshotted it,
Right.
somebody found it, somebody has it, right? There's no delete anymore. It is, you say it, you do it, you have to own it. And I think that I think the teachers that are really embracing that right now, because it's a sort of a scary thing in a way, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And again, it goes back to I think the administrator sets the tone, how they
I
interact
know.
during the year. And you made a great point too. Know your staff well enough to know what's going on. If I know something's going on in their life, but I had an evaluation plan for that day, I'm going to change it, you know, because it's about the relationship. It's not about just dotting the I's and
I
crossing the
love that.
T's. And I think that's so important.
Well, they love you, man. They love you, and you obviously resonate with a lot of people, and I appreciate what you put out there. I think teachers need the support and the love, and you give it to them, and it's good to see. So, thank you for taking a few minutes with me. Any one or two, I always ask people, any one or two last nuggets of wisdom you want to share for anybody, or advice or motivation?
Well, I just think for the teachers, just be encouraged. Know that this will pass. Hopefully they'll be back in the classroom with their kids that they appreciate. And I do a lot of times I write stuff like great leaders do this and list out characteristics, but it's to encourage them too. I think that when leaders understand their role is, yes, it's to lead, but it's really to serve. You want to help your staff be the best that they can be. and then they will live up to it. It's the whole Pygmalion effect. If you think people can rise to a certain expectation, they're probably going to. And usually the reason is, though, because you're going to help them get there. You're going to lead a little better than you would if you didn't think they were capable. And the same thing for teachers in the classroom. Let's expect the best from each other, but right now, let's just make sure we're taking care of each other too. And I appreciate everything from superintendents down to the staff that are stepping up and just dealing with this chaos in the manner that they are, and know that they are appreciated.
It's been an amazing thing to watch. I mean, to watch these schools and these teachers mobilize to get kids fed and to use buses to have different drop-off points. And I mean, it was all hands on deck. And it was, as an observer and a person who takes the observations and brings them to people. For me, this has been a hard time, I think, on me. It's been on me and on a lot of people, but within hard times, there's always inspiring, encouraging moments. And for me, watching the education community come together the way they have and put forth the work that they have to get to and to do the things they've done, I think is spectacular. And I'm with you. So I appreciate everything you're doing, man. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll catch up soon. All right.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. Yeah, had a great time. Talk soon.